Hello S3 biologists, and welcome to your first online taught lesson with me via the interwebs. Today we're going to have a look at food chains and food webs. I thought it would be quite nice for me to record you a wee lesson just to make it a little bit easier for you to understand some of these concepts, as I realise that reading it off a screen for the first time might not be the easiest way to learn. So the plan for this lesson, we're going to cover some new key terms, things like carnivores and herbivores and omnivores, and we're going to look at how food chains are structured. So before we talk about the structure of food webs and food chains, we need to have a think about energy and how plants and animals get their energy. The most important part of this to begin with is the energy that is released from the sun. So as the sun shines, it lets off rays of light energy, as you can see with these black squiggly lines. Plants are able to capture that energy and turn that into sugar. This sugar is really important for plants because it lets them grow, and it can also be used as a source of energy for animals. So when they eat the plant, they will receive some of that energy that the plant has made from the sun. Now, because plants are unique in this way, they're the only things that really make their own energy using the sun, we can give them a special name. So we call green plants producers. This can be any green plant. This can be a plant that grows from the ground. It can also be things like seaweed and algae that are found underwater. Animals are a little bit different. They obviously can't get energy from the sun directly. They have to eat either plants or animals to get energy. So we have to eat food to keep us going. We are consumers, and any animal that eats plants or animals to get their own energy are known as consumers. So as it says here, organisms that eat other organisms are called consumers. Now there are three types of consumers that I will talk to you about on the next slide. So when we talk about types of consumer, we need to think about what these consumers are eating. So we've got animals that are essentially meat and plants, which are essentially veg. Animals that eat only meat or only other animals are known as carnivores. So an example of that would be a crocodile. If you are an animal that only eats plants, like a sloth, you are a herbivore. And if you like a bit of both, so if you eat both plants and animals, you're known as an omnivore. So raccoons are omnivores because they will quite happily eat vegetables, but they will also eat meat if they have to. So now that we have this information about producers and consumers, we can start to think about food chains and food webs and how all this new information that we've just learned links together. So I'm about to draw out 4 different plants and animals that you would find in a woodland setting, and we're going to have a look at how they would be linked in terms of their energy. So you can see that there are some oak leaves, a caterpillar, a mouse, and a poorly drawn owl. To connect those together, I can draw in some arrows. Now, what these arrows tell us is not about who is eating who, it's about the direction that the energy flows in a food chain. So, for example, the energy that is stored in that leaf gets passed on to the caterpillar when the leaf has been eaten. And the energy from the caterpillar is passed on to the mouse once the caterpillar has been eaten. And that's what the arrow shows. So it's not about who eats who, it's how the energy is transferred through a food chain. So if you see a single line of animals with some arrows in between, that is a food chain. And we'll now go on to talk about what a food web is. So a food web is essentially showing us how lots of different food chains are linked together. Realistically, if you were to look at some woodland, there wouldn't just be oak leaves, caterpillars, mice and owls. There would be lots of different other species interacting in different ways. So we can represent that in a food web. A food web will also tell us about energy and how the energy is flowing from species to species within that ecosystem. So what you're going to see now is several different species that you would maybe find outside in the countryside. And we're going to turn this into a food web and look at the different parts of this food web. So the first thing I'm going to do is draw in some blue arrows, and this is going to show us all the links in this food web. Like a food chain, these arrows are showing us how the energy is flowing through the system. So for example, the energy from the grass is being passed on to the lamb as the grass is being eaten. And then Mr. Fox, who eats the lamb, will receive the energy from the lamb. So we can go into a little bit more detail with this food web, and we can look at the producers and consumers that are here. So the daisy and the grass are both producers. They are making their own energy from the sun. Now, everything else in this food web is a consumer, and a difference between a food chain and a food web is that you can see that some animals have multiple sources of food. So if we look at the rabbit, for example, it's eating both the grass and the daisy. So it's getting energy from the grass as it eats that, and then energy from the daisy that it eats that as well. Same with the golden eagle, because it is eating both the fox and the rabbit. Okay, now we can further label this, and we can define our consumers even more precisely by labeling them as herbivores and carnivores. So in this case, the lamb and the rabbit are both herbivores because they are eating the grass and the daisies, and our fox and our golden eagle are carnivores. We don't have any omnivores in this example, but if we had something that said ate both daisies and rabbits, that would be an omnivore. So the next thing I'm going to do is take out a food chain from this web. So I'm going to use the grass, the rabbit and the golden eagle. I have put my arrows in to show me how the energy is flowing through this food chain. And I'm going to introduce you to two last terms that you're probably familiar with, that is predator and prey. So in this food chain, the golden eagle is the predator. So it is a consumer that is hunting another consumer. And the rabbit in this case is the prey. So it is the thing that has been hunted and eventually eaten. So that's all you really need to know about food chains and food webs. Key terms from this lesson include producer, consumer, and our three types of consumer, and predator and prey. So once you've watched this lesson and hopefully you have absorbed it into your brain, two tasks for today. I have made you a wee set of flashcards on Quizlet. The link to that is on Teams. Can you please go on there and have a go at revising the key terms that we've talked about today. So you choose how you want to use Quizlet, or if you want to make yourself some new flashcards to add to your pack that you made last lesson, more than welcome to do that. I have also uploaded a little quiz onto Teams just to test your knowledge on these key terms and also your understanding of how food chains and food webs work. I hope this lesson's been useful. At the end of the wee quiz, there's a wee feedback box. If you want to drop any comments in there about whether you think this is great, rubbish, or something I need to do better, please do. I hope this finds you all safe and well, and I will see you next lesson.